podcast. I'm Dr. Sam, and with me, as always, the great Dr. Robert. How are you doing today?
Great.
The
That's a
great
joke.
Dr. Robert.
Thanks. Appreciate the introduction as always. How you doing?
I'm doing great. We have a guest, and we love our guests, and I'm so excited for Andrea Bazett, the co-founder of Pack Animal, which I'm really excited to talk today because we're going to talk some training, behavioral modification, and that is something that, as a general practice veterinarian, I can't tell you how often people ask me, "What do I do about my dog's behavior? They're doing X, Y, or Z," or sometimes I will recognize behavior like on a puppy visit that is concerning right away. Or just a new patient visit where I'm like, ooh, you don't want to let this go without addressing it. So, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely. So, do you mind kind of giving us a little bit of your history, a little backstory? So you are a certified dog trainer, and can you kind of tell us how you got there? What made you do that? And yeah, give us the history on you.
Absolutely. So I got my certification because I um, had my own dog. Maggie is my 3-year-old pup. I wanted a dog for a very long time. And I imagine that's a story a lot of people have. We had a dog growing up. Her name was Princess, and she was a Rottweiler. A
Okay.
lot has changed since we had Princess, though. Growing up as a kid when your parents are the ones who primarily are calling the shots on what happens, it's very different. And so I knew as I was getting older that I wanted to have a dog. And so we got onto a wait list. We considered adopting versus getting a dog. And for a variety of reasons for ourselves, we decided that getting a puppy from a breeder was the best path for us.
Hmm.
And so I did a lot of reading and I knew, okay, we're going to get a doodle because I'm allergic and the chances are better that I will be not having allergic reactions. Watched videos, read books, got Maggie. And
Hmm.
it's a lot like when you're in school and you're taught how to do math and you're taught how to do different things and then you get into the real world and you're like, oh my God, I was not prepared for this. And so we
We
did the best
understand
that we
that one
could.
quite well.
Yeah. We did the best we could, and we got grooming, had a groomer set up in advance, had a vet set up in advance, got her into her visits. And we're set up with training classes, and she did well in those classes. But then, as she got a little bit older and got into her second fear stage, she was developing some reactivity, and so she would hers presented because actually I found out later on what caused it, which is rare, but hers presented in that she would bark at other people or dogs if they were even as close as across the street from her.
Hmm.
And so I had reached out to our former trainer who had since moved, and she's gave me some suggestions on what to do. But then I reached out to trainers around me, and I came across a guy who just had fantastic marketing and was very clearly trying to upsell me.
Hmm.
And I had come across a few other people then and became skeptical. And I was like, you know what? I could either go and find these people, or I know about myself that I'm a caring person who enjoys psychology and likes learning and teaching others. So I'm going to become a trainer myself. And so I signed up for the Animal Behavior College
Hmm.
and went through a curriculum which was self-paced. And, I read, there were like 10 different modules where you did some reading and then you did an externship. So I shadowed someone. And that was a really great model for me to get the theory and then the practice. And then I even volunteered with people around my neighborhood that I saw needed some support with their dogs. And so I am, really passionate about what I'm doing. And of all of my exams, like I am a chartered alternative investment analyst as well. I will say dog training is the certification that I love the most.
That one day you're gonna have to explain to me what that is, but we'll go to that. But no, I think it's I mean, when you find something you're passionate about, especially when you've had a situation, it's very easy to think you're really good at training when you have a dog that is not at all challenging. that's not every dog. And I think especially in the wake of COVID, there were so many COVID pups. I have a COVID pup, so I'm not judging people who got dogs during the pandemic, but it was a challenge to socialize them properly. And I went through a similar thing. Even my dog, thankfully, he's quite easy, and we got over a lot of the things that we dealt with. But I mean, I was worried a little bit about some of the things that were happening during his like second fear period, same exact thing. Um, and I worried a little bit about some resource guarding that I saw him display. And I have three small children. So I was like, well, that is not going to be a safe situation. And so thankfully I had worked with a trainer that I knew, and we already had a relationship. She helped me work through that and we were able to do that. But it is really hard if you don't have any sort of a resource, any sort of ability to do what you did. And also the understanding of that development in dogs, because I don't really think people realize that there are very real periods where these things can come up and they can be handled, but you have to be on top of them. You have to recognize them before they become an even bigger problem or a child gets bit or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a fear period, like a second fear period at all. So see, things I'm learning already on this podcast. So
Well,
uh,
do you mind? Would you kind of go through like developmental periods of like the first year of a puppy, or would you be comfortable doing that? Because I think that is such a helpful thing. I try to prepare all my puppy exams for it, so I'd love to hear your how you outlay it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people will that bring home a puppy will bring them home around 8 weeks. Whether you're getting a dog from a breeder or from a rescue or a shelter, like even if you bring a dog home from a rescue or a shelter, they will make an estimate about how old the dog is based on a few things of their development cycle, their teeth, how they're, um, able to move around, etc. Um, it's really important that people think about what happens in those first 8 weeks of a puppy's life. And the reason for that is because that is like when the first fear stage occurs. And that's also when, I think we can talk about socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be happy to define that. For now, I'll say the term socialization, then I can come back to define it somewhere later.
Mm-hmm.
But that socialization is really critical even before a puppy comes home to you.
Mm.
And the thing is, people might say, well, why can't I bring a puppy home earlier? It's because it's really important, if possible, for a dog to stay with its mother and with its litter mates in that time. There are a lot of other risks to their developmental progress that come into play if they don't get that critical period with their family. So it's this a bit of a give and take where you want to make sure they have enough exposure to some of the different things they will experience in life with you, but at the same time have the comfort and support of their mother and their siblings.
Right.
It's a lot harder for puppies that are rescued or found someplace in really unfortunate situations, but for people who get a dog from a breeder, you really want to make sure you're finding a breeder who knows how to handle that first fear stage period,
Right.
and those first 8 weeks. Then you bring the puppy home to you, and socialization is really critical still in that adjustment period of a dog coming home.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a dog comes home to you at 8 weeks, then you want to start having positive experiences for them with a variety of things they may experience around them.
Mm-hmm.
And to do this, you want to think about what kind of lifestyle you live. Do you live in a city? Do you live in a suburbs? Do you live in more of an urban setting? What kind of life do you want to have with your dog? And have experiences. When I say positive, I'm saying look for ways that you present things slowly enough that your dog will not get scared by it. If your dog gets scared by it, you want to slow it down. Um, there's the teething stage, which, it's not, I'm not like putting in the exact terms
Yeah,
of what the
that's fine.
developmental periods are, but it's more what people experience. Baby shark it's a rite of passage to
Yeah.
have cut
Yeah.
up arms.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's so true, and I always tell people, I'm like, "I promise you it will not last forever." Like, they will have their full adult dentition by 6 months, and that's a pretty reliable thing, and I will, like, I promise you it will end. I always tell people, I'm like, "But it's going to happen," and, I mean, I guess I was always kind of the mind of redirection and trying to teach them the proper way to deal with how they're feeling and making sure that they're having positive outlets for a very natural behavior.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. It is a very natural behavior. And when people see these dogs that are able to right now walk around on their own and they're able to run and they're able to frolic and they're able to get into things that you don't want them to get into, they're babies
Yeah. Yeah.
and they don't know. So the same that you would not let a toddler or even younger be on their own and expect them to know everything, you can't expect a puppy that is 8, 10, 12 weeks even to know what to do. So yeah, right. You're right that teething phase and the baby shark phase will get better. But after that, you get to look forward to puberty and the teenage
Exactly.
phase,
Yep.
and their hormones are changing, and then
Yep.
they're experiencing their world in a whole new way. And also, not to mention that, you need to make sure that they're properly vaccinated before you bring them out into the world. So, right around after you bring them out into the world, soon after that is when, these hormones start kicking in, and then they get their second fear stage. So, it's really crucial through all of these to be aware of body language cues, which isn't really talked about in training classes. People
That's
jump
true.
to like sit, stay, come, leave it, drop it, wait, etc. But those things are important. However, reading your dog's cues are a core part of knowing how to properly implement positive reinforcement,
Mhm.
and how to support them through these different developmental stages. And that second fear stage can last well into, a year older, a year or more. And a lot of the dogs that end up in shelters are from families that don't know how to manage that, you know, um, teenage phase.
Yeah, I think so
Um,
many people think like, "Oh, well, my dog got to 6 months. They got their adult teeth. They figured out how not to pee in the house. So we're done. Like training's over." And I do try to warn people like, between that 7 to 10 months it's going to start and then we're going to have adolescence. You're going to have to deal
yeah.
with that and the dog that you think like may change a bit and a lot of times what I notice too is that so a lot of times especially for smaller dogs, but depending on the philosophy of the clinic, and I mean there's a lot we can go into about when you should spay or neuter your dog, right? But a lot of times what happens is we'll do their last vaccine at 4 months, about 16 weeks, and then we won't see them again until they're about a year and a half. And so you have a dog that was bouncing around and happy and eating cheese at their last appointment is now terrified in the corner, don't touch me, like totally reactive, total. And they're like, well, they weren't like this last time. Something must have happened. They must have been abused or must have been hit or something. You guys must have done something. And it's like, no, no, they just don't know like, they don't know what to, like, is expected of them here. They haven't been here in a year and now I'm making them stay still. I'm taking their blood. You know what I mean? And so it's like
Yeah.
we're asking a whole lot of them that you don't ask from them on a regular basis at home. So let's just go slow. Let's remind them this is a happy place and you know what I mean? But it is really funny people don't realize that changes a lot of times because we haven't seen them.
Yeah, the experience that people have in one place doesn't always generalize to others.
Right.
And actually, as part of our work with pack animals, we are collaborating with canine cognition researchers. And I was fascinated to learn that a lot of canine studies are actually based off of studies with toddlers.
Mm,
So, for
mm-hmm.
example, there's the Many Dogs Projects, which is built off of the Many Babies Project, and many more studies than that. I could get into them if you wish, but the idea of socialization, which actually this could be a good moment to come back to, socialization people think of as a requiring interaction, right? So like they would think that right now the three of us are socializing,
Mm-hmm.
but in the context of dog training, socialization means exposing your dog to a variety of the different things that they may experience in the day-to-day life that they have with you
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the ability to have context and know that that is safe. Because when a dog is fearful, it's because there's something that is impacting them and making them wonder if there is a danger and a threat to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so then they might react by barking. And so a lot of fearful dogs are improperly labeled as aggressive just
Mm,
because they're standing their ground.
very true.
But if I was during the pandemic, if there was one person who had 10 boxes of hand sanitizer, if I walked up to them and I was like, hey, I'd like some, and they're like, no, get back, get away from me. Like
Mm-hmm.
that person's afraid, right? That
Right.
person needed to protect their family and who knows what else.
Mm-hmm.
That person who's seeming aggressive to me could have had another reason that's rooted in fear.
Right.
And so when we observe in our dogs that they go into a new place and they're barking at their veterinarian,
Mm-hmm.
they just haven't had the ability to socialize, meaning they haven't had enough positive experiences over the course of their life to help them say, this is safe and I'm okay here.
Right. That 100%. Totally agree. I try to tell people all the time, I'm like, you don't have to wait until the next time they have a exam. Like, we're across the street from Target. Next time you go to Target, just come on in. We'll give them a treat. They can come and experience this in a really like very happy way. And you can bring them. They don't have to just come when they're about to have all the stuff that we expect from them. Nobody really takes me up on it. Maybe one day they will. Like, it's free. We're not going to charge you. Just come.
Well, because my brother's going through a lot of this right now with his own dog because he has adopted a new dog in his family, and he's going through a lot of the question marks about like how to own a dog. And he even called me the other day. He's like, "Dude, she's acting crazy. She's running around the house and she's biting at everything and spinning in circles." I'm like, "It's called the zoomies.
Yeah.
It's don't panic. Don't deter the behavior. It's like a good way for them to release their energy and enjoy these moments." I think there's just so much unknown about how to take care of your pets because, I mean, you can look for information everywhere, right? You have the internet, you have social media now, you have really books you can read. How do you know which is a reliable source? And actually, one of the reasons I really enjoyed talking to Andrea because we met at a conference is you just have a great background to kind of enhance what you already know. And I think it really leads a lot of credit to what you're doing because this conversation, I'm learning a lot and it's great. So very, very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, on that point, there is a lot of information out there, which unfortunately cheapens it.
Mm,
And at the same time, it makes it very easy for trainers out there to leverage marketing terms that they know are going to get them attention,
mm,
but that do not actually have the means or motivation to deliver on those terms.
mm,
So my approach is a positive reinforcement training style.
mm-hmm,
What positive reinforcement means, I think, is quite misunderstood, unfortunately.
mm,
And there are a lot of trainers out there who say they use positive reinforcement, but aren't able to apply it in all situations. And so, actually, there's a survey that I had collaborated with another trainer on because we were just getting tired of seeing how often people are putting out terms that then are not quite, that are just causing confusion for the dog guardians. And we put out a survey asking dog parents, what questions would you like to ask trainers before you hire them to evaluate fit? And we asked dog trainers, what questions would you like to be asked to evaluate fit? And we saw dog parents giving a very general question, what methods do you use?
mm,
Whereas dog trainers were saying, in what situations would you use positive reinforcement? And are there any cases when you wouldn't? Or why do you train the way you do?
mm,
And so it's important to help people learn how to get more to the heart of education rather than just letting the marketing terms and all of the conflicting information out there just cloud our judgment.
mm. And I think the hard thing is to and I know maybe you guys have talked about this also, is the expense of really good training. And actually the expense of training in general, for two reasons, I would imagine, and you probably know better than me, just being more in this space, that either you have the people that are taking advantage of marketing and are trying to make money, so there's that. But then there's also the fact that, like, to do it really well and to do a good job is expensive, and to continue to do it. And I think that, like, that is a hard thing. It's not just like a set it and forget it, like, oh, I did one training session with my dog, now I'm done. And especially I learned even just firsthand, like, we did the initial training, and actually our very first training we did with our dog, she was positive, but then when people started asking questions about how to deal with certain situations, her answers were not at all positive. And I was like, oh, I don't think we're in the right spot. So then, and then when I went and found this other trainer who I do know very well and is like a really good trainer, it was a lot more expensive, number one. But then to keep working with her when we had issues come up later, it was like, well, we did this initial thing and then we had these new things come up, and so that is a barrier, I think, for a lot of people.
It is a barrier. Absolutely. It is. Um, it would be absurdly expensive to educate dogs in full through means that are available, traditionally. So
Mm-hmm.
what we expect of our dogs has changed significantly. When you think about everything we do with them on a day to day and how we try to raise them now, but the way we can provide them education is much more expensive than it ever was before. And you're right that part of it is because those trainers who are able to give you results in a way that doesn't hinder your relationship with your dog
Right.
are going to need more time.
Yep.
And in needing more time to really change the dog's psychology and teach you how to understand your dog, that's going to mean, greater expense. And then at the same time, these are knowledge roles. Like when there are the trainers who have invested in their education,
Mm-hmm.
they have invested because they can help people, but they can't, you know, charge a very, very low rate, because then how are they going to make a living, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how do we all live the life we do to be able to help others, but not deprive ourselves of being able to live?
Yeah.
Because if we do, then we need another job. And if we
Yeah.
need another job, then we can't help as many people. So there's a whole cycle that I'm not sure everyone is aware of. And then when you really slow it down and say, well, here are all the different pieces that have to happen. Like you guys actually, you had an episode on why people are waiting in the waiting rooms despite
Yeah.
having appointments. And there's so many pieces in that cycle before my appointment that
Mm-hmm.
it's really helpful to break down. Um, but yeah, the challenge is that if you go into a group class, you're going to be one of many, and you will be given the generalized guidance
Right.
that may not fit the needs you have. And so you could have something that is like points 2, 3, and 10, and the trainer's covering points 1 through 10. So then what do you do for the other points?
Mm-hmm.
And you end up feeling, oh, this isn't for me, but you really do need 2, 3, and 10. And alternatively, you might have to spend $100, $200 an hour in a private class, but in that class, you might achieve only point 2 in a 1 hour class. So yeah, there are these different things that make it challenging. And I feel like a lot can be improved by even simply approaching your dog and yourself with curiosity. So, if there's one thing I would say to people who are having a hard time knowing how to train their dogs and challenged with the cost of it, I would say approaching your dog with curiosity and patience
Mm-hmm.
are two really difficult skills, but that can make a big difference in your own life and in how the two of you can then work together and try to take the steps necessary. Because that curiosity will make you be like, what if I try this? Or, to your brother's puppy, um, if when she's bouncing off the walls, if he's like, what could be making her run around right now? What happened right before? And is it okay for me to let her run? Or is there a point when maybe I can try to have her do something else or replace that behavior with her doing something else with me? Like maybe I can get a tug toy and try to like have her re-engage with me and slow her down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think first, I love the quote or the curiosity and patience because
Yeah.
Ted Lasso, if you haven't seen it, he's got a quote so good, but his biggest thing is like be curious, not judgmental.
Mm.
And I think that works for all walks of life, but it just resonates with me because it's a really big thing. Like be curious. And I think we're too quick to say we know what's going on and judge what's going on, but sometimes we take a step back and take a look and say, hey, why are they doing this? And I think this whole training thing as a whole, people take a lot of pride in their pets.
Mm-hmm.
People take a lot of pride in having a well-behaved pet, but there's a lot of stress with it that comes when they're not well-behaved. Like that's the most like no one wants to be the guy or girl that has a dog that's barking their head off the whole time, and like you're trying to get them out of a bar or like walk on the side of the street. Like it's terribly stressful when those situations happen. When you have a great pet though, you're very proud. You're like, yeah, that's me. And like that's my dog. So I think it's a it's a really important thing to like do well if you can and get the good information.
And it's hard, I think, when you have never had a dog that was anything but ex- for whatever reason. Like part of it might be just what you said. You grew up with a dog that your parents were in charge of that maybe they never took anywhere. So in your house, it was like, fine. I mean, our dog growing up, Hero, he was like the best dog. He never went anywhere though. So he was never expected to behave in the way that my dog would be expected to behave if I take him out of the house and now he has to interact with the public. I don't know what Hero would have done because nobody ever really tested him. He probably would have been great
Yeah.
because he was the best dog. But but like, but it's not really the same. And I did have a Frenchie that I had in the city that would go out and eat at dinner. Like we would go out to eat, and that was just acceptable to have your Frenchie with you. And Phoebe, she went everywhere with us. So,
Maybe.
but that would be a completely different thing than me trying to do that now with Gus because he has had a totally different experience. It wouldn't be fair for me to just be like, well, you should just know how to do this because you're my dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's actually a fantastic book that I would recommend for anyone, even people who have a well-behaved dog, because they might want a dog in the future, and it's always good to be prepared. The book is called Loving Edie, and it's by Meredith May. She used to live in San Francisco, and she had tons of golden retrievers growing up. And so the book starts with her talking about how she, really misses her golden retriever Stella, and how she's been really wanting to get another dog, and how her partner was like, I'm not so sure. She finally convinces her partner, and they end up getting a dog that, I mean, the book, it's about it. I think the title is like Loving Edie, How a Fearful Dog Taught Me to Be Brave.
That's cute.
And so Edie is a very fearful dog. And it's kind of this idea that a lot of people have with fearful dog, or with even humans, right? Like any deviation from like, hey, I'm good, is like, oh, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's unfortunately not that simple. I mean, I know that, and maybe part of why I really love dog training and what we're trying to do is because I have like very firsthand experience with my husband who developed OCD, like, diagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder when we moved to California. And his is a contamination variety of OCD. And I
Mm,
know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so OCD, but like when you actually have it, you
mm,
can't just move past it.
right.
And so, in that way, like with dogs, if a dog is anxious, the dog's not just going to move past it. And so the idea of this book was just how Edie had all these signs that she was trying to show her mother, but her mother just didn't know how to interpret. And
Mm,
because she didn't know how to interpret, she was forcing, and unintentionally, forcing Edie into situations where her fear level just kept escalating.
mm,
And in psychology, there's the terminology about your window of tolerance. And in training, we talk about your threshold, but it's effectively the same thing.
yeah.
You've got your window of tolerance is where you can actually do things. You can function. You might get to the higher end, to the lower end, but like you're
Mm,
still going to be able to function, learn, eat, listen, speak, just do normal like bodily functions. If you get to hyper arousal, you might, like a human, start yelling at people. Your heart rate will increase. You'll get really anxious, overwhelmed. You won't be able to process information. For dogs, they'll obviously bark their heads off,
right.
and be that dog that you're trying to pull down the road and they're having a hard time moving because they're still reacting to that trigger. And then hypoarousal is when you're just, really like the frozen, and you're
Shut
stuck and
down.
you shut down, exactly.
Yeah.
And so for a dog, they might be ones where like they freeze on a walk and they can't do anything, or you're trying to give them a treat and they won't take it and they're just like not looking at you and they're looking around, they're lip licking.
Mm,
And so the things that you want to do is you want to keep your dog within that arousal window. And
mm,
for some people or dogs, their arousal window is really narrow.
yeah.
And so it's easy to fall into either of those states. And for others, it's huge. So for Meredith's older dogs, they had a really large window of tolerance. For Edie, she had a really narrow window of tolerance.
Mm.
I'm the one who's ad-libbing the window of tolerance, is like I read the book, but I think that would be a fantastic way for people to see that just because you had a dog that was wonderful doesn't mean, every dog is that exact same way. And it also doesn't mean it's necessarily you, because genetics play a large part in the development of dogs and humans.
Very true. Very true. And so can you give us a little kind of lowdown about pack animal and what it is and like how it came to be? And we just want to hear all about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Um, there are two parts to Pack Animals.
Mm,
There's the Pack Animals app, which will be available in the Android and iOS app stores. And then there's the Pack Animals hub. So the app would be available anywhere that people have smartphones, but the hub is going to be in San Ramon, California. And it'll be like imagine if WeWork and Equinox and a social club had a baby and made it dog
mm.
friendly.
Oh, that's nice.
Um, for both of these, the idea is that everything we've talked about today has, communicated how there is a lot of opportunity for people to be able to learn better with their dogs. And so
Hmm.
we want pack animals to be part of that future of dog guardianship.
Hmm.
And so we're doing so by focusing equally on the human and on the dog throughout the dog's full life.
Mm.
And it's possible because we're collaborating with trustworthy humans and canine professionals to capture their really extensive knowledge,
Mm.
then translate it into what we call knowledge nuggets. And these knowledge nuggets are like relatable pieces of content that help you think about like the day to day of what actually happens and you have to consider. And then it can lead you into lessons and practices. But this packaging of nuggets and lessons makes it so that you can do a lot of learning on your own in your own time at the approachable price point of an app.
Mm.
And that is because, like, 2 hours with me to cover maybe one topic is the same as 1 year of pack animals
Right.
with many thousands of hours of human and canine knowledge.
Mm.
Um, but we don't just stop there. We also want to use positive reinforcement for humans.
Yeah.
So we have animal crackers in the platform. And so anything people do on the platform, they can redeem for, or they can earn animal crackers on, which then they redeem for cash.
Mm.
And that allows us to also be approachable to people who maybe have a tough time making the economic investment of,
Right.
a big training commitment, because with what they do, they earn that back. So it's kind of like credit card points, but you actually get the money.
Hmm.
And for those of us who maybe money isn't a consideration, they can donate it to charities or rescues or nonprofits. And these are always, you know, um, platforms that are needing support
Right.
to be able to continue helping pets. So um, I'm really excited by being able to make something like this available to the general public
Yeah.
in a way that meets them where they are
Hmm.
and can be like that best friend that they can just call on, or feel supported by or motivated by, because accountability is really difficult when you're not in a setting of like learning with others.
Hmm.
But it's also costly to be able to tap into that, and so we don't want people feeling like, oh well, I want this, but uh and so we're
Right.
trying to address that concern.
Yeah. Is it something where if people are having a specific concern, let's say at a certain time with their pet, they can um like it's like filed where they can look up something like, hey, I'm seeing resource guarding, and so now I'm going to go to this part about resource guarding or something like that.
Yeah, yep. So we have certified trainers who contributed content on the topics, on many different topics
Wow.
that are specific need states,
Mm.
as well as like more general things that people may not know to ask for, but they effectively are asking for.
Mhm.
So, for example, with resource guarding, yes, there's a library, and you can choose from that library what you want to dive into further. And so you can just keep going through your knowledge nuggets and go into lessons to learn more about it. Or you can, just generally tell us what you're interested in, and then we'll be able to give you a sense of all of that. Um, but I find it really fascinating how there are things like people say how one of the things they really love from having a dog is being able to be more mindful and decrease their stress. But one of the biggest things that they experience in having a dog is stress. So it's this unfortunate conflict and presents an opportunity to help people um, meet their needs in a way that they don't necessarily know how to ask for.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about what about having the dog is stressful? Is it their behavior, the ability to care for them? What do you think that is?
Yes, I think that the behavior of there are a lot of natural canine behaviors that people label as problem.
Mm,
And then there are also a lot of expectations people have about what it means to raise a dog that are not quite aligned with the expectations.
mm.
And I mean, as humans, we know that there's a mismatch often between, you know, expectation and reality.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so if we can help people recognize that also it's not just them, like one of the biggest things that we've heard from people is they feel like, oh, I I feel so guilty because X. Actually,
Mm,
guilt is considered a disenfranchised dog parent guilt is considered like disenfranchised guilt because people don't know that it's so common or that they can really speak about it.
mm,
Um, and so the ability to let people know that it's not just them, I think will open them up to feeling like, okay, if it's not just me, then that means I can do something about it because
mm.
others are also doing something about it. And they just need that like freedom and recognition and ability to feel heard and like they're part of many.
Seems like a common theme to like most mental health concerns in general. Even just to one of our we had somebody on that had lost their cat and kind of came up with a whole way to deal with pet loss, and that's another area where people don't realize that like other people are experiencing just what they're feeling. And yeah, I really don't think people realize how common it is to have dogs with some, either extreme or mild behavioral concerns. I don't even say issues because you're right, a lot of them are very natural and like reasonable reactions to their world, but nobody knows how to deal with them. So that's really nice to have a resource, especially one that people can afford. Because that I think is something we really come up against in veterinary medicine, having pets. It's not only people with tons of money that should be able to have pets. So this makes that possible for people who maybe don't have tons of money.
That is the hope. And to your point about mental health, there is a hope of mine that the more we can help people understand how to communicate with their dogs and be patient and curious about their dog's effectively mental health state,
Mm,
about when they're experiencing anxiety, fear, um, um, stress. There's actually another really fantastic book. It's called From Fearful to Fear Free,
mm-hmm,
and it talks about fear, anxiety, and stress,
mm,
and how much more how if you just let it be, it will actually much more likely get worse rather than get better.
mm,
And so, in that book, they talk about different things you can do to help your dog, but there are also studies where they talk about how anything we do to help our dogs will help us too. And so
mm,
it's my hope that if we can learn how to be supportive of our dogs' mental states, then we can learn how to be more supportive of our own and each other's. We've absolutely made significant progress as a society
mm.
accepting mental health and trying to be more open talking about it, but we're still not there yet to really
No.
talk about it. And my assumption, and you guys will have to have me back in a few years, or
Yeah.
hopefully sooner,
Yeah.
is that if we can help people talk about mental health as relates to their dogs, then we can make them more confident talking about it themselves and
Mm,
be more patient with it. Like I see how, you know, Chris's OCD journey with his therapist and what it's like, you know, with family members and friends,
mm,
um, kind of what that means and how a lot of that relates to like how you help a dog that's afraid of walking along the street or afraid of cars going by or bikes or things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I do secretly hope that pack animals can help people with their mental health needs because we help them understand how to help their dogs.
I love that. I think that's wonderful. That's the whole
Yeah,
point of the human animal bond anyway, right? So,
Yeah.
it's great. Do you want to share a little bit about the hub as well? I know obviously
yeah.
we have the app, but the hub is just as important. I wish you were doing it down here in San Diego, but you know, be needy. You're right.
Eventually.
Eventually, yeah. So the hub is going to be opening at an outdoor mall in San Ramon. It opened about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's just like the place that everyone comes to. It's modeled after European Times Square. And so when we moved to where we are in San Ramon, I was just walking around. I was like, oh, there's some open spaces. I wish we could be up here. And now it's happening. And so it's going to be right across from the Equinox, actually. And half of it is going to be a dog training and learning space. So we will, have the padded flooring so people can have classes. We can have different courses set up and things people can do with their dog to just drop in and be able to engage with their dog on a regular basis in a way that also gives them access to a trainer. So at all times, we'll have a trainer on staff because I recognize that there are, as you were saying, Sam, particular things that you might want to work on with your dog, but you don't need to go through all of it. And so if you can go into the facility like the hub and have a trainer on staff who's there to be like, hey, let me help you with that,
Mm,
um, then it's a lot more approachable
yeah.
because it's part of your membership to the hub rather than needing to get a specific training class for
Mm,
working on something.
yeah.
Um, and then the other side is going to be co-working during the day. So that's the WeWork side. And so people can come with their dogs into the hub to be able to, do work and bring their laptops in. Um, and the benefit there is right now, if people want to work with their dog, they're either at home or they're leaving their dog at home and going
Hmm.
elsewhere, or their dog comes with them, but maybe they're like having to sit outside of a coffee shop and internet is spotty and it's like, oh, forget it, I'm going back home now. So there's now, people have that reliable access to a comfortable space amongst other dog parents and be able to also have that trainer who's able to look for body language cues and say, hey, I think your dog might need a break. Why don't
Yeah.
you, do some enrichment exercises with them on the other side rather than continuing to work away. And so it helps people become more curious about their dog's body language.
Mm,
And I'm excited by the social club, which is like at night and on weekends. People will be able to grab food from those different venues that are in the city center, Bishop Ranch area, and bring it in to hang out with their friends and their dog. Um,
cool.
we'll have regular events. We'll have actually canine cognition studies. So people can participate in dog studies with researchers who will come into the space because
Nice.
it's hard to, have a lot of dogs at once in most of the different labs that researchers have. And so we can
Hmm.
give them like one place to have many dogs in one day be evaluated for whatever the study is that they're doing. Um, and yeah, just the opportunity to bring people together to learn more. The hub as an extension of the app is going to give us that opportunity to connect directly with individuals that just want to give their dog a life worth living.
Yeah. That's
I think it's
awesome.
awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and on the opening day, so that way I can drive up there and be part of the first
Yeah.
one. I'll take a little road trip with Loki, teach him some manners on the way up. So that'll be
Yeah.
great.
He's calmed
Uh,
down so much,
yeah,
over the
yeah,
years.
this podcast I had to put on mute because he was barking at me. I'm like, it's not the time, dude. I was like, not doing it. So,
Meanwhile,
uh,
Maggie is just a rug over there. She's
Yeah.
like blended into the rug, at
yes.
least for
Oh,
now.
those. Be back. Yes. Hi. So yes, we all love them. Well, if you want more information about pack
Mhm.
animal, where's the best way to do that or get more information?
Yeah. So our website is packanimals.com. Our Instagram is at Join Pack Animals. And yeah, people can send me a message on Instagram, and I'd be happy to connect and, share more about what it's like to raise our dogs or answer any questions they have about what the app is offering. We do have a newsletter as well. So,
Oh, cool.
there's a link on our website and on our Instagram that takes you to our newsletter. And in that, I send out um, a weekly newsletter that has a knowledge nugget in it. It's got a hot tip, it's got what I'm reading, and also updates on the launch of the app and the hub. And yeah, just trying to be a helpful resource and be able to encourage people to be patient and curious for themselves and their dogs.
That's so wonderful. And if people have questions that they want to send through us, it's podcast@mybalto.com, and we'll forward you anything. And I would love to kind of stay in touch and know what you're doing as things go. Do you go to other conferences? Are you going to any of the conferences this year yet for vet conferences?
I will be starting to go to those vet conferences. Yes, Robert actually told me about a couple that are on my radar, and so I will look forward to meeting you both in person again at some of those, because it's important to be where veterinarians are, because I do see how pack animals, like everything we're trying to build, can help with the experience that dog parents and dogs have when they come into the vet office,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can make it a more joyful experience for everybody.
For
So yeah,
sure.
trying to.
And we want to give people resources. Like, honestly, we want good, reliable resources that are affordable for our clients. So that's a huge thing for us.
Oh, I
That's
can't
wonderful
wait.
to hear.
Yeah, we'll be very excited. Hopefully, we'll have you on in the future. If we have more behavioral stuff, we can maybe have you bring back and talk again, just share some more things. Because it's like good information that's reliable. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And people are always curious about behavior. I think we may have to open up the floodgates and let people ask some questions and then have you back to answer them, because I like your philosophy. I think you have a really good way of thinking about it. Your energy seems like just such a positive one, which I think is so nice. And I could see dogs responding very well to you. So that's very good. That's high praise for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, even people, I end up talking to people, out, and I just like, hey, I have a little tip for you. And then we end up getting into like a long conversation and getting to know each other, and then yeah, building up a lot of friendships. I'd say that's one of the things I love most. I guess I'm curious what you guys love most about having a dog, but I'd say for me, it's like how many conversations I can have genuinely with people. And I just am so like seen in a way that I'm not when I'm on my own.
Yeah, it does bring down some defenses when you have your dog with you. That's true. It's an interesting thing because I don't live in a city anymore. So I don't like, we don't venture out the way that, because that was very true when I was in LA and New York. But now I'm in Indiana in the suburbs, and my dog doesn't go as many, large things, you know. So our enjoyment of him is more within the family and getting him, see him like interact with especially the kids and stuff like that. You just really, I love to see them caring for him and just like bonding with him. It's very special to watch that. So that to me is one of my favorite things, is how he enhances our family.
Yeah,
That's
I love
wonderful.
Gus too. Gus is great. He's a good boy. Loki's just my best friend. Has been for day one. Like it's just honestly, he's yelling at me half the time, but it's like having an annoying little brother. He's great. He's just a good time. I couldn't ask for more. A good exercise buddy. Talk to him when I want to, and he talks back. So get a husky.
He is a husky.
Very good husky.
So it's
Well,
yeah.
if there's three things I might leave your listeners with
Mhm.
that they can start implementing today. One, we already said, be patient and curious. Behaviors don't occur in a vacuum, and there's something that your dog is trying to communicate. Body language is often misunderstood or missed, but the more you can just look at your dog and instead of trying to jump to action, be like, why did that just happen?
Mm.
Then that'll help.
Mhm.
Of course, if there's something really bad happening, like jump to action and be curious later. But the second thing would be learning never ends. And so there are always new things that you can do. And if you can try to be creative about, just even teaching your dog something new, like teaching them to come to you.
Mm,
So having them figure out like, okay, if my dog isn't recalling well, is it that the word is not being heard by my dog? Maybe I can like do a thigh slap instead, like do like a thigh slap that communicates a sound that my dog can respond to and everyone in my family can do. So that's a big thing. It's like, how do you get your entire family on the same page?
mm,
So just be open-minded to continue learning, because that joy of continuing to learn with your dog also helps decrease the stress in us and helps us experience new things together that furthers our bond together. And then the third is, when you are learning new things, recognize that positive reinforcement isn't just like, you did what I want, here's a treat. Positive reinforcement, to truly be done effectively, means that you understand what that student is capable of doing for you. So you wouldn't ask me, who barely goes to the gym, to run a marathon. You'd ask me to go to the gym first.
yeah.
You'd be like, okay, let's get you on the bike. You would figure out what my starting point is and then help me grow from there. And that's why the number one thing was be curious.
Mm,
So figure out what your dog's starting point is, and then do things that you're confident they're able to achieve
mm,
with that starting point, and then extend it. Maybe in your mind, have that window of tolerance in your visual where you're like, okay, well, am I pushing my dog's window of tolerance, or am I outside of it right now?
mm, mhm,
And that will, so long as you're within the window of tolerance, you're able to continue teaching your dog,
mm,
and the two of you will have a more successful experience together. And then you'll reward them for doing what you want, and then you'll make it a little bit harder, and then you'll reward them, and then you'll, you know bring it back down in a different environment with different distractions and make it easier. So just be aware of how difficult the thing is you're asking your dog to do relative to what your dog realistically can, and then work within that to expand their capacity. And I promise it'll be a whole lot faster than if you went too far too fast.
wow.
Yep. I don't
Those
think
are
we do
very
it
good piece of information. Yeah. I think that's probably true of people too, right? So wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I don't really think I can top that. So this has been the Posit Podcast. Thank you again to our guest, Andrea. Thank you so much for coming and sharing what you do with us. And hopefully people will check out Pack Animals. And we'll talk to you again soon.